Tamira is asking in the comments, what are the most profitable properties that I manage? I'm not sure how to answer that, or I'm not sure what you're actually asking. Be more specific, and I'll absolutely answer you. I don't know if you're asking what class of properties, A class, C class, D class, or if you're asking what's more profitable, multifamily or single family. I'm going to answer it in this way. The most profitable properties, I'm convinced of it, that my property management company manages would be my wife's and my rental properties. Now I understand the first thing you're going to think is, well, okay, you own a property management company and your property management company is giving preferential treatment towards your own rental properties. It's not at all. Our The properties that Grow Property Management, the company I own, manages for my wife and I. They're merely implemented into the system. My staff doesn't know the properties we own. The contractors that do work in the properties have no idea the properties we own. I mean, the ones that actually do the renovations when we're converting it over to a flip before it becomes a rental, they know, of course, we're the owners because we're coming and going and checking on the progress. Other than that, the properties are getting no preferential treatment. They're getting no favoritism in marketing. They're getting no more monies put towards any efforts to finding a tenant. None of that. But they are absolutely, as far as I can tell, the most profitable, properties that I manage. In fact, I often tell this story. We have a property that we bought for $63,000 that we put in probably another 60,000 into renovating it. That gets it's currently getting $1,640 rent. So if you can do the numbers on that, that's pretty profitable. Now, this property, if I took you there, actually, I often tell this story. A friend of mine who owns a property management company in Philadelphia here, a competitor, asked if he could see the property because he had a project around the corner. And he sees the property, he gets on the phone, and he calls me. He tells me, Joe, I got to tell you, friend to friend, you did wonderful work in this property, but you have no business asking $1,573. And that's what it was listed at because it wasn't quite finished yet. And he told me, same opinion I had, that it clearly is a $1,200 a month rental. And I also felt that it was a $1,200 a month rental. Well, at $1,573, this property got exactly 30 applicants. And we currently have the tenants there, and the rents go up 3.9% per year. They've been there for 3 years, so I'm not sure what that actually comes out to. But it's got to be right around, I think, the 1640 mark is probably what it's got to be. 3.9 times 3. I'm sorry, I don't know. But that's a big difference. A property that two experienced Philadelphia property managers who really know the Philadelphia market are coming in and looking at that property and saying this is clearly a $1,200 a month rental, but yet it's renting for $1,573. And the reason why is because the property is incredibly rentable. So when my wife and I renovate a property, or when a tenant moves out and we go back in to make some improvements to the property, we're making the property extremely rentable. We're not making a rental property, we're actually making a home. We're making it fully functional. We're going to a bathroom, we're looking and we're saying, okay, well, if you were to be here, is this bathroom functional? Do you have a place to hang a towel? Do you have a plug to plug in a hot air dryer? We're putting in outlets out in the backyard in case somebody wants electricity in the yard. We're putting spigots in the yard. Our homes are highly functional. We're also caring for our properties better than a lot of the property owners are willing to do. So, owning a property management company, it's my job to take care of the properties, but we still get the owners involved. We're just not making improvements to the properties. We might be doing repairs to the properties and maintaining the properties, but when a tenant moves out, we're often approaching the owner and saying, hey, this is the damages that we need to correct for the property to right it again. But these are the improvements we're suggesting, and very few owners actually go for that. Whereas my wife and I will. And it always drives me crazy whenever we're renovating a shell and the contractor says, oh, it's just a rental. That drives me nuts. Or when I go to Sherwin-Williams and we have a paint account with them, and they'll give you a discount on a paint line, and we get our discount on their best quality paint. And the reps are constantly trying to get me to switch to what they call their rental quality paint. And it drives me nuts for two reasons. A, inexpensive paint is going to cost you more in labor. It's much harder to work with. High quality paint will save you time and labor. So I can either pay for the paint or I can pay for the labor. But what drives me crazy here is, why would I ever want to downgrade? It's an investment. I mean, if higher quality paint is going to get you more rent and reduce your vacancy, and if that higher quality paint is going to cost X, and the result is going to cost Y, then why would you ever go with a lower quality paint? And that's our approach to our property. So we're actually not looking at it and saying it's just a rental. We're actually looking at it and saying, okay, well, if we were to pay for this backsplash, behind this counter, is it actually going to increase our rent enough to make it worthwhile to do? Is it going to reduce the vacancy? Is it going to increase the property's equity? And and sometimes the answer would be yes, and sometimes the answer would be no. Often the answer is going to be yes, because again, we're actually renovating a home. We're actually not renovating a rental. The one thing is we want to get the equity out. We want to approach a bank and say, hey, we want to value this home, and we want to take that equity back out. So we want it to actually have value, as much value as we can possibly get it to have. Two is I love having the exit strategy. I mean, if we ever wanted to sell one of our properties, we don't have to sell it to an investor. We could sell it to a young couple looking for their first home. Anybody can buy this property. A landlord can buy this property and they can rent it out. But our homes are homes. Like, you can move into our home tomorrow and it would be a good home for you to buy. And also we just want to reduce our vacancy, and we also just want to get maximum rents. And so our properties always get maximum rents merely because we're actually spending a smidgen more by putting hooks on the back of bathroom doors and little things like that throughout the house, that really we're trying to make it as functional as possible and to make it into an actual home for somebody and not just a rental property. And that's the nice thing about it, is when if you want to sell a house, you have to convince a buyer to buy that house. You probably also have to convince the real estate agent to some lesser degree to champion that house. And then you have to convince a lender, an appraiser, to lend that amount of money. That's a lot of hurdles. If you want to rent a property for elevated rent, you just have to convince a tenant. You don't have to convince anybody else. You just have to basically give them a home and say, hey, is this home desirable enough? Do you really want to be here? And I think that's why our property, this $1,200 rental, rents for so much more than $1,200, is because it's a desirable property. That's why 30 people wanted to actually live there. 30 different people wanted to live there, just because it was we made it very desirable. We put window boxes on it. We just made it into a nice property. And again, the key here is the money we spent was a fraction of the money we're actually getting. And that's where it kind of comes down to, is this investment, is putting this window box, it's going to cost this amount of money. Is it going to get us more rent and reduce our vacancy? Yes or no? And the answer is always yes. And I think that's why our properties are so much more profitable, is most owners just don't view it that way. I think most owners view the properties merely as rentals. And we actually have owners that it does drive me nuts to own these rentals that are $5,000-$6,000 that really do not want to put money into their properties. So we actually have a $6,000 rental in one of Philadelphia's, probably Philadelphia's nicest neighborhood, to where when you open up the kitchen cupboard, there's the floor is missing of the cupboard. So basically it goes right down to the floor. And you're like, this is a $6,000 rental in a beautiful neighborhood. And you're making a lot of money on this rental, and you could make a whole lot more money on this rental if you actually were to give the basic functionality. I mean, I would think with a kitchen cupboard, one would expect to have a floor, especially in a $6,000 rental. But no, I think that's the approach of most owners, and I think that's why our properties are always much more profitable. So, all right, happy investing.